And I know you've been watching Bitcoin very closely. A lot of the big guys have gotten involved now. We always talk about Paul Tudor Jones, Anthony Scaramucci, Grayscale, PayPal, Square have helped to boost this cryptocurrency through that 20,000 mark, but we've seen some volatility of late. Are you a fan of Bitcoin or not really?
No, I am. And actually, we bought it through GBTC, which is an over-the-counter stock. And we bought it down at 1138. So we've had doubled on that, which has been really fun. Wow. And we're at a tail. But you're right, it is extremely volatile. And obviously, I've been getting asked the question, is it too late to get in? And this is really where having some idea of what the charts look like at least helps. And of course, understanding that we have a movement going on here beyond, of course, now legitimized, as you said, through all of these institutional channels. And you can add Stanley Druckenmiller to that list as well. So I would say right now, if you so we're looking at Bitcoin. It couldn't quite get through that 20,000. I think if we're looking just at GBTC, if it gets down to around 20, you have a pretty good risk down around 17, which was where it corrected to 1760 last week when it had that big volatile swoop. And if we can get through the highs, some people are calling for 35 to 37,000. I don't think that's so crazy. You have some people saying that it can go to 500,000. But I think that would be a little bit insane. But yeah, I like it longer term. It's really the basis of is cash trash. And some people think and have thought for a long time, including myself, that that does seem to be the way of the future, is to go more digitally when it comes to currency.
I love that you bring in even more folks such as Druckenmiller, and you make a great point about the optimism that's surrounding Bitcoin. And people are throwing out 30,000, 40,000, 100,000. I mean, they really are throwing out some wild numbers, but as you start to see more and more companies accept Bitcoin, use Bitcoin, COVID moved us more into the digital world. It's not insane to have some, right? I mean, you certainly sound like you're optimistic on it, but people have to be ready because you can have a $3,000 move in a day, and that wouldn't be unusual, right?
Absolutely. There's a couple of threats to it. I mean, it's also actually been an interesting hedge against inflation, has emerged more so than gold, which tends to really be more geopolitically moved. So that Bitcoin has taken a lot of that where gold would have been the big hedge over the last few months, considering the talk of more stimulus, et cetera. But I think there's one caveat people should be aware of with Bitcoin and all alternative currency, and that is if Europe and China and some of the other countries that are exploring their own digital currency, that could be a direct competition that might take some of the thunder out of it. So I'd be keeping an eye on that as well.
All right, let's move to the MJ ETF, because we've discussed this before and we've talked about some of these cannabis stocks. The group is doing great today. Obviously, now we're talking about cannabis. So many folks have become more accustomed with cannabis and saying medical marijuana, they're really more comfortable with medical marijuana than they have been in years past, and even recreational as well. The new administration coming in, it'll be interesting to see what they have to say. Do you like this group? Are there specific names? Do you like the ETFs? How do you handle this group?
Well, yes, we not only like it, we've been in MJ for a while. Another one, we've taken some profit and we're looking to add over a certain level. We'd like to see at this point a weekly close over 16. We think that that would take the base and really make it a formation that's solid, giving you good risk parameters around that 16 level if it takes it out. Aurora Cannabis today is up over 12%. Tilray. A lot of these stocks are just basing and they could really get going. In terms of the next administration, we do know that the Biden administration has expressed a more friendlier tone towards cannabis in general. Whether or not it becomes federally legal, I think it's inevitable. I just couldn't possibly tell you when. But clearly this country wants it. 5 states passed it in the last election. Americans, when surveyed, most of them are for legalized pot, as you mentioned. Medical marijuana is becoming more and more acceptable. I think what's going to happen over time is some of these smaller cannabis companies might get eaten alive by the bigger biotech companies once it goes more federally legal, because they're going to want to jump on the bandwagon as well. But nonetheless, right now, space looks great, and it's one of my favorite areas to be speculating in.
Yeah, you know what I think, Mish, is really interesting? I had a guest on recently who said that he liked the names that were more U.S. based, and that those that were purely Canadian may have more risk. Do you know anything about that?
Well, I do know that in terms of at least when I last looked in the whole Canada marijuana space, there were definitely some issues there. And a lot of the issue, by the way, is that it's legalized, but it's hard to get. There's restrictions in terms of getting it, as opposed to here, when a state goes legal, like, for example, Colorado, it's very easily accessed. So I think in terms of that, yeah, there's probably going to be some problems, and you can always find problems wherever you look. There'll still be a market that is going to be more of the illegal market to undercut the pricing of legal cannabis. That's just going to happen. So I think really when you're looking at the United States, I would also be looking at some of these tobacco companies. They've made huge investments already into pot on the knowledge that it will eventually become more federally legal. So I've been watching Philip Morris and MO, which all of a sudden the name of the company is escaping, but MO is the symbol. It's a tobacco company.
Right,
and
Altria.
Thank you, Altria. Thank you, Nicole. Yeah, so yeah, those are also very interesting to watch. Also, some of the beverage companies like Constellation Brands, very interesting to watch. Some of the companies that surrounded around marijuana in terms of growing light companies, et cetera, et cetera. All of these things could prosper. And once this continues, then you're really looking at other companies, marketing companies, distribution companies. All of these things could benefit, not to mention the employment could really grow, which it already has in terms of revenue dollars and jobs in states like Colorado.
Okay.
So yeah, all around it's a good thing.
Right. Yeah, well, we'll have to wait and see on all of that. But those are certainly some stocks to watch. And then small cap growth is an area that you've shown an interest in. Upwork, GoGo, these are some names that are on your radar as well. Tell me about those, Mish.
Well, the reason why I brought up those two names here, and you and I have been talking about these small cap growth stocks for months now, but those two names have come up because we actually have done some back testing using a quantitative model in terms of trend strength indicators. And those two stocks came up, and I like them even fundamentally. So GoGo has to deal with aeronautics. It's kind of a crazy stock. In the last 2 days, for a small stock, it's had a $2 range, trading up to $11.95 yesterday and down to $9.90 today. But if you can stand some of that volatility, I think overall that will go up. And I like the other one that I mentioned to you as well, because I think that has to do. Upwork, yeah. Yes, thank you. It has to do with freelancers that you can hire to develop websites. So it sort of takes advantage of the stay at home and new businesses that could come out of this pandemic, because as we know, out of something bad, new things, new growth happens. And it could also take advantage of people going back to work as well. And that came up as a UPWK also on our indicator. So we are in both and we're watching both, and we think both have a tremendous potential to the upside.